All right, we're live. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you another unlocking of Age of Sigmar. So today we have with us the resident Tomb King, the pro when it comes to everything Tomb King, especially when it comes to painting Tomb King, as far as I'm concerned, Tomb Kings. Vince Venturella, thanks for joining us, Vince.
Hey, Mitch, how you doing, buddy? So just let me back up that statement a little. So I totaled up in the points, in the new points in the book, exactly how many pure Tomb Kings I have. Right now I have converted like old unified undead stuff, like Coven Throne and such. But if you just stick to pure TK units, I have 12,920 points of pure Tomb Kings painted.
Painted. See, that's the key. Painted. Because if it was just models, that there's a lot of people that would be, but if you have painted models in that category, yes, you are definitely in the upper echelon of Tomb King royalty.
Yeah, for all intents, I can field 13,000 points of painted Tomb King. So there you go.
Hopefully
nice. That qualifies me for something.
Very nice. And just speaking of paint, real quickly before we get into the commentary, Vince, if you're not a follower of Vince, you should be. He is the host, along with Tom, of Warhammer Weekly, which is a great show on Wednesday nights. And it was another great show last night, talking about greenskins. And also you do a series on painting, which is something that's helped me in particular, as far as, upping my game and getting more paint on, fighting against the gray, as you usually coin it. Great series on hobby cheating, a lot of how-tos. And I think it's really something that everybody should check out if you haven't discovered it already.
Well, thank you very much. I do really appreciate that. Yes, it is my singular mission in life to win the war against the gray, to help people confidently get paint on their models. That's absolutely what I live for.
Yeah, well, I'm part of that army. If, we could call it. We have to find a name. There's already Kiss Army, something anti-gray.
Yeah, I was thinking about trying to get a T-shirt together, but I need a design. I want to have thing that says a little thing that says soldier in a war against the gray, and a little soldier with a paintbrush. But I don't know. I'm not an artist.
Hey, look, I need an extra large size for that for myself. I will definitely help promote it. But these days it might be a double extra large, actually. Any case, all right. So we have the format for this unlocking, and anybody who's seen my previous videos knows how this works. We're trying to show how you can field various different army types, working with factions and sub-factions based on the new General's Handbook for matched play. Now, obviously, if you're playing the other formats, whether it's narrative or open, which, for open play, that's pretty much how Age of Sigmar players, those of us who were the early adopters since the carryover from 8th edition, we've been playing that way all along, which is very, very in self-comp or event comp, but mostly it's put down what you want in any format you want with whatever limitations you and your opponent decide. But with match play, things have changed. And with a little bit of guidance with some of our guests, experts like Vince, we want to try and get an idea of the kinds of lists that would be fun as well as competitive in that match play environment. Because now we have points, we have force organization, we have allegiance abilities, and the like. And I know, Vince, one of your great loves is this army, the Tomb Kings, as well as others, and hopefully we'll have you on for some of the other ones. We had you on previously for Skaven, we have 3 lists. We have a 1K list, a 2K list, and a 2.5K list. Now, the reason for that is because that's the tiers where it provides you with organization in the General's Handbook under match play. But it seems like the most common with tournament organizers is going to be that 2,000 point list. That does not mean that there won't be variations. So use these as a guide. This is not the only way that you can build these lists. It's just an idea of how to work the synergies to get the most out of it, and of course to get the best representation of a list like Tomb Kings. Doesn't mean that you can't combine them with, say, other death units in the death faction. I know that you have a particular viewpoint on that, however, Vince.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so 2 things here. Let me back this up real quick and say you're going in the order of a collection of the way I collected my armies. My first army was Skaven. We did that already. The second army I ever owned was Tomb Kings when I picked them up in 2004 or whatever when they came out. So there you go. We'll just keep moving through in order I collected.
What's the third one? What's the third one?
What was the third army I collected? Slaanesh.
Okay, so we gotta wait. We gotta do Slaanesh with you next, then. Okay.
There you go. Okay. So, but at any rate, Yes, on the question of the larger death faction, why would you want to pollute the perfect Tomb Kings with that wet, muddy nonsense that you vampire counts players just vomit onto the table as it crawls up from your gross, disgusting earth? No, you say, I like your little "I hate dust." Like you really like "I hate dust" is wrong. It should be "I hate sand." By the way, if you're going to properly quote a terrible line from the prequels, but I love sand.
I'm gonna go change that right now.
There you go. And the like the Tomb Kings really don't need much of anything else. Unlike a lot of the sub factions around right now, because they are a legacy army, they're a completely coherent force, right? You're spoiled for selection here in leaders and behemoths and in everything. I mean, they don't have a huge number of artillery, but they have enough. They've got it. There's no missing boxes, right? You can check it all. You got lots of choices. That's why this army is so great.
Yeah, and just to clarify further, I know that there was some, and still some, questions that I see on forums and on videos about the Tomb Kings, as well as, like, for instance, the Bretonnians. The Tomb Kings are completely playable. They may not currently exist in the Age of Sigmar storyline, as far as we know. There's been hints, but they disappeared during the end times. But they have points in the General's Handbook. The War Scrolls are out there. They exist. They haven't been updated with a new battle tone, but who knows what the future may hold. And GW has been very open that this is a legal, official, and playable list, and they're not looking to, quote-unquote, retire any of these armies at any point, as far as the ability for you to play them at events as well. I mean, so when you look at, first of all, they're also, not first of all, second or third of all, they're also extremely aggressively pointed, where I feel that they're extremely competitive as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. And look, in a world where Forge World is making female models, anything's possible. So, keep the dream alive. That's all I'm saying.
Well, speaking of Forge World, I just had a game just recently, and I managed to play for only the second time the Morngul. And I got to say, just amazing.
I told you, look, you can go back to the video where we did the original review of the Monsters Arcana, and I said the most broken thing in here is the Morngul. And I stand behind that to this day. I watched that thing in a recent bat rep just go toe-to-toe with Archaon and never die. There you go.
Just so you know, I had, and I don't know if you saw my battle report from yesterday. I kind of just threw it out there because the person that I played with really wanted to, hopefully, wanted to see it online, so I obliged him. But it stopped half of his Stormcast army from wanting to move, just because I moved it up on that side of the board. He didn't want to go. He didn't want any part of that thing, and he did not lose a single wound. It's amazing, and if it did, it would have been able to restore them. And you know what I found was really interesting? The footprint of that model is kind of small. That's what makes it even more broken.
Yep.
You're not restricted like other big models. So it's an awesome model. Definitely there's ways to take it out. The primary way is, of course, to lock it up, not to try to kill it. But we'll save that for strategy videos. What I was going with that is that mixing up all of the Death faction is completely viable, despite prejudices like the racist Tomb Kings who hate vampires, which, by the way, is not all of Death. Anything not Tomb Kings is all vampires. That's not a truth. There's a variety of different things, like the Flesh Eater courts, and just skeletal units where you can do a whole spectrum. I, in particular, have a love of the Tomb Kings. It's kind of like a closet love, because I don't have a Tomb Kings army, but I have a casket. I've got. I'm converting up sepulchral skull. How do you pronounce this again?
Sepulchral stalkers.
Stalkers. I have the archers. I have some of this stuff throwbacks from during the end times when it was Undead Legions. Now I'm using it. Occasionally I have skull catapults that I've converted up as well, using Tomb King parts. There's a really great synergy between these two lists, but Tomb Kings, as you said, can really exist in its own vacuum. So let's go ahead and talk about something else, which is something that you didn't take advantage of at all in any of these three lists. So briefly, let's just hit upon this, and that is the concept of summoning. And then, because it's definitely an important part of a Death faction list. Whether or not you pick it is up to you. Tell me your thoughts on why you didn't even include summoning, and what your thoughts are on summoning in general.
Well, the TK in general have a lot less summoning. They have a lot more model refill, right, where things just come back. And I feel like in general, that dodged a lot of the heat, the model return thing, because you're always capped at whatever your original limit was, right? So people in general are much more friendly to it. So I don't care. It just makes for a happier game time. I don't have any problem with summoning specifically, but obviously I also don't. The use for it for summoning in a match play scenario is you set aside those reinforcement points, and now you've got a big selection of your army that can not just sort of deep strike and be where you need them to be, hopefully, but also can be whatever you need them to be, including breaking the rules of Behemoth and stuff like that. It's all fine. I just don't think it's a strategy TK need. TK and all their incarnations almost just win by grinding. They are like the sand, just slowly working down all the stone, right? Until everything is just sand. And I think that's how they play well in that fashion too. You don't really need to. I don't need to hold anything back or summon. I can just keep pounding through, keep refilling my models, because they have so many good ways to get models back.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I'm glad you brought that up, because the rule for match play, very different from open play, is, and just to clarify the summoning rule a little bit more, is that you when you summon, you're drawing from a reinforcement pool. It's points you set aside that you then have to take, and very specifically, you cannot exceed that. If you put aside 400 points, you can, even if you get accelerators when you get end results on summoning, sometimes if you get a really high result, like a roll of 10 or higher, and you can get, instead of 10 skeletons, you can get 20, that you still have to pay for those 20, even though you got a nice big benefit from the reinforcement points. It's just that you've got a bigger unit now, and potentially with a buff, because for quantity, a lot of these units have buffs. Either way, you have to pay for those points. The power of the summoning capability is manyfold. Like you had mentioned, you have strategic elements. You can summon them onto later in the game onto objectives, where you need quantity models to score those objectives potentially. You have run the risk of being unbound, sure. You also run the risk of losing your caster or casters, meaning you lose those points. That is a very serious and dangerous risk. But you also have the flexibility. You made that point, and I wanted to hit upon that. There's been some debate, and as there always is, there's always debate. Hey, it's GW, it's Warhammer, it's a tabletop miniature war game. There's always debates. You made a very big distinction that the reinforcement points are flexible. I have heard people and read about with people and had discussions with people that are saying, no, it should be fixed, or this event had a fixed summoning pool. What's your thoughts on that? Because we've already seen, and just let me qualify this a little further, we've seen a very big retraction on the power of summoning, well needed from open play, but it's been extremely pulled back on the limitations and capability of summoning for match play. In some cases, I think maybe a little bit overly so, but warranted that something needed to be done. But the concept of the flexibility gives you that benefit of that toolbox, that Swiss Army knife, that if you put points aside, you can reach in and grab something, even to grab an extra behemoth, because of that's how the rule works. But what's your idea and thought on that overall?
I would never push for that. First of all, there's nothing in the rules that says you have to set those reinforcement points. It's quite clearly that they're just an amorphous amount of points you can use to summon whatever you happen to fire off as a summoning spell. There's absolutely nothing in there that states you have to dictate what they are. Now, if people want to place an additional layer of rules on it and say that they want to do that, I mean, I'm never one to tell a TO what they should or shouldn't do. If you like it for your tournament, knock yourself out. It's your world. Do what you like. Now, personally, would I want it? No. Absolutely not. Like, the whole idea of the thing is it is the Swiss Army knife for this faction. It's how they solve problems. It's just taking something away that doesn't really make the game any more fun for anyone or balanced in any way. It's, if I could get broken stuff before, you're just making me decide now. You're taking away my utility and lowering the dividend for smart play, right? Like, you're just the game. It's a tactical decision I have to make and be intelligent enough to utilize smartly. So there you go.
Yeah, I can't agree more, and I probably wouldn't have put it so eloquently or politically correct, because my feeling is don't do it. Don't neuter it any further. It's fine the way it is. There's definitely great uses for summoning. Please, TOs, don't further try to restrict this, because it's fun. It's the idea that you have that question mark of what are you going to put out there. You're already risking losing those points, or not having them be unusable, you might as well have the flexibility as it's written in the rules and clear that clearly as it's intended. But I'm sure we'll see an FAQ on that to clarify that, and who knows what will happen in the future. But let's jump forward and kind of get into our list. We have 3 lists. One of the, in terms of just the progression of what you've collected, this kind of works. But in terms of a progression of a new player collecting, there's always new people coming online. You may be in a long term or an old school Tomb Kings player, but you may also think that this is the kind of army you might want to try to get into. Challenges finding some of the models, certainly, because they're not being produced anymore, but they're out there. Let's start with the first list for the lowest level tier, 1K. I'm going to go ahead and share my my screen. And you can give us the rundown on what you picked, why you picked it, and we'll analyze it from there. How's that?
Sounds good.
All right. So there's the main screen, and here's the first list. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit further. This makes sense because if you're actually starting to collect from scratch, the first, as you're building up your list and as you're painting it to field it on the table, you're probably going to get up to 1,000 points to start. Why don't you run through it for me, Vince?
Sure. So this is a very small model count army, that is for sure. There are 16 models in this army. So this is the all chariot list almost. I mean, for there's a little bit of other threat. So yeah, it's the Tomb King and Royal Chariot, who is the chariot leader, right?
I'm going to pull up the War Scrolls also as we go through.
Yeah, that's fine. I can certainly talk about them. And then there are the skeleton chariots, namely 4 units of them. I mean, it says 12. It's 4 units of 3. They come in 3s. So hence fulfilling and beyond the battle line requirement. And then the sepulchral stalkers, and most importantly, the Royal Legion of Chariots. Okay. Now let's talk about what's going on here. So this army is called Win on the Charge. It just rip roaring around the battlefield. The idea is you just rip roar around the battlefield and charge into everything and kill it. All the Tomb King's stuff, okay, all the chariots double their attacks when they charge. Okay,
that's the inherent benefit of the chariots.
Correct. So you put out a lot of attacks when you charge. So you can see there the Tomb King Royal Chariot. If this model charges, the Tomb King makes 6 attacks rather than 4 with his dynastic blade, and you can double the number of attacks made by the skeletal steed. So I guess it's not true doubling for his dynastic blade, but whatever. They get a bunch more attacks when they charge. There you go. The chariots themselves double their attacks, both the steeds and the guys on top or whatever.
There we go.
Yep. So these guys have, there you go, crush them beneath our wheels with all their melee weapons if they charged in the same turn. So good stuff there. Now, notable about this, this is an army that can charge incredibly long distances fairly reliably, because the Tomb King himself, his command ability is to let every chariot unit within a pretty big radius, 18 inches, re-roll their charge rolls. Okay. And so remember, you don't declare a charge against a unit in AOS. You roll a charge distance, right? So every unit is you're just going to roll your charges. And if you, the real key is, remember, you don't have to charge. Okay.
Right.
So if you roll an 8 and you wanted to get a 9, you can just choose not to charge. Like if there was a unit within 6, but you didn't want to charge them, you wanted to charge something farther away, you can just say, I don't want to charge, and just not move the unit. That's a thing.
Yeah, there was FAQ. That was actually specifically as given an example. If you wanted to take a run at a further unit, but you had an option for a closer one. If you failed the further one, you could just opt not to charge, even if because the second one maybe you reconsidered the closer.
Correct.
One. Yep.
Yep. And so it's really the Royal Legion of Chariots War Scroll that brings this all together, which is the battalion. Okay.
Let's go down to the bottom here. There we go.
So the first thing is, yeah, so you got the Pride of Nehekara. So you add 1 to all hit rolls for skeleton chariots that are part of this. Namely, that's all hit rolls. So it takes their bows as well and makes those hit on 4. Because remember, all those chariots also make multiple ranged attacks.
Sweet.
And the chariots can also run and shoot. So there, you can also play some fun, like dodgy tactics, running around at 10 inches plus a d6 and still shooting. So this army can both. What it's going to do is bait you. Right? They're going to run around and shoot at you until they get you in a point where they can bring in multiple units and hit you all at once on a good long charge. And then obviously the other thing that the Royal Legion does is the bone crunching impact, which gives them back their impact hits, right? So when you hit with 3 chariots, you roll 3 dice, and on every 4 or more, it's a free mortal wound, right?
Yeah.
So I like impact hits. Impact hits are sweet. Mortal wounds are sweet. There you go. The reason for the Sepulchral World Stalkers is not just that they fit the point cost absolutely perfectly, but also because the one thing that this army could have a problem with is things that want to hide way behind protected sort of areas, you know, like shooting artillery or something like that that's going to sit back there.
Right.
Something annoying that they can't get to in time. So the Sepulchral World Stalkers let you, you know, unburrow and just mortal wound that thing into the ground, right? These things are unbelievably deadly with that transmogrifying gaze. And the key is, the reason I love these things so much is they can unburrow within 9 inches of an enemy, like most ambushers of that type, right? But their transmogrifying gaze has a range of 10 inches. So like when they come up, they can just shoot immediately. And you know, they're going to get some number of mortal wounds out of their shots. And if you roll really well, you can just melt something.
Yeah, they also are pretty cool. Yeah, I'm converting up with some Morghasts without arms, with just longer tails. Just my own version. My Tomb Kings that are not Tomb Kings, but I actually love these as well. That mechanic is absolutely phenomenal. It's a way to bring, like you said, it's a way to bring stuff onto the table that you don't deploy initially without having to worry about the summoning.
Yeah, the problem with the chariot list is that it doesn't have a lot of board control, because things are going to be able, like, they can run around and they can start hurting, but ultimately they can't project that power very easily. Like, they've got some shots, but it's not that many. I mean, ultimately the whole army, right, puts out like 24 shots or something, you know, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s. It's not a huge amount of shots.
It's 1,000 points. We're talking about 1,000 points.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good for 1,000 points.
But the key is these guys help you project that power, right? Because they can come up anywhere and just wreck face.
You also need something, because even in a 1,000-point list, you need something that's going to be able to take on, you know, that's the potential for a centerpiece or a big general or a monster, because you could fit that into a 1,000-point list, a big model or a big threat. These guys will counter that threat pretty easily, or drastically reduce it in its effectiveness because of the ability to kick out some mortal wounds.
Yeah, absolutely. They're also good nutcrackers, right? When you've got super high armor stuff, these can melt right through that.
Yeah, they're awesome in general. I love these guys in general. Okay, so what else we have on this list?
That's pretty much it, man. That's the list. It's 4 things. This is like I said, it's like a 16 model army. So.
All right. So
this one thing you're probably saying at home is, wait a minute. In match play, there are 3 scenarios that rely on number of models around an objective, right? To hold that objective. Yes, there are. My answer is just kill all the enemy models. Like, that's your best case scenario. Because if it's an objective based game where they're going to sit on an objective, that means you're going to get the charge because they're sitting still.
Yeah, I have a battle report that I'm going to put out fairly soon. I've kind of held off just because it's a lot of unpainted models, and I'm trying to reduce the gray model battle report that a lot of that's still out there. Everybody wants to see painted models, but it's a Skaven army against for a newcomer to the game, which is why most of his stuff is unpainted, versus a small model count 1,000-point game, the Beast Claw Raiders. And you really get that. What you just said is key. When it comes to quantity, taking and holding objectives, or even taking back objectives, it's a big deal when you have these powerful lists with small model count, but that's the thing. You're not going to win by model count. You have to destroy your opponent and remove him from that or her from that objective. So yes, and on a 1,000-point game, typically you're playing on what? I forget if it's a 3x3 or a 4x4 that they recommend.
4x4.
I think a 4x4 would be just fine, but it's still a lot of real estate for so few models. So the fact that you're mobile and you have such a long strike distance is, I think this is a very interesting list at that size.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about the allegiance abilities that we're going to go with it.
Absolutely. That's the next thing we're going to get to. So if you don't know how allegiance works, and you probably would at this point because the General's Handbook has been out for a bit, but just in case, if you stick to a specific keyword, so if it's the high-level factions, death, destruction, chaos, order, you'll get those particular allegiance abilities to choose from. If you stay within sub-factions, where they've starting to release now battle tomes that have them, Sylvaneth, Bone Splitters, Beastclaw Raiders, and then many more that are coming out. You'll have specialized ones for, say, sub-factions with other benefits, like being able to take the certain more elite units as your battle line, your core troop selections. So in this case, we don't have a specific Tomb King allegiance set, so it's going to be the Greater Death list. So why don't you tell us for this 1,000-point list what you picked? And by the way, you have a battalion here. So that's
but I realized as we were sitting here talking that I messed up. I can't take an extra artifact despite the fact I have a battalion because I only have one hero, and you can't. I remembered as we were discussing that you can't double up on artifacts unless a single hero.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the restrictions on allegiances when it comes to things like that?
Sure. So these guys would be Death Allegiance because obviously there is no Tomb King Allegiance yet. Obviously their battle trait would be the Deathless Minions, the thing that sort of all Death armies can get that gives you like the sort of 6-up ward save, right? If you're within 10 inches of your general, which is fine. Like that's the Tomb King. He's going to be around. Hopefully there's going to be a couple units of chariots that benefit from that. Seems fun enough. There are no other heroes to help project that out, but that's fine. As far as talents go, like the command traits, you get to pick a single command trait, right? And the general here would pick Master of the Black Arts because one of the limitations here is that you don't have a wizard, right, in this army. But if you take Master of the Black Arts, your general is a wizard who knows Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield. So there you go. Now you've got spells. You've got a wizard, so that's cool. Fun times there. And then for his one artifact, I would give him the Cloak of Mists and Shadows, which lets him like disappear and teleport basically. So once we're battling the hero phase, you can pick him up and set him up 12 inches away from his original location, and you've got to be at least 3 inches away from enemy models. So like if the Tomb King finds himself out of position, you can just pick him up in the hero phase, put him amidst a bunch of the chariots, and then declare your charge thing and charge in. Yeah,
very sweet, very sweet.
You want something that this list is all about the fast movement game. You want to land your charges,
and you're going to need it on a 1,000-point list because there's going to be a lot more board, even though you're on a smaller board. There's going to be a lot more board than there are, models to cover.
Right.
To cover them. I really like this. This is a well buttoned up list, very themed. As far as the allegiance abilities, just to clarify a little further, you get one free artifact that you can place. It cannot be on a special character. We'll see about that in one of your later lists. Where that limitation is as well. The same thing with a command trait, different from a command ability. A command trait is something special that's linked to your general. And if there's any range for that command trait, it is projected from your general. Something that we've seen FAQ'd recently, where, for instance, the overriding death ability that gives within range of any hero or your general within 10 inches, you get that 6-up unmodifiable save versus any wound type, mortal or standard. There's one that allows you to, from the general's battle trait, that adds a +1 to that. But it's only from the source of the general, 10 inches from the general, to get that +1, i.e. a 5-up. You opt not to take that in a small list. I don't think that's a big of a deal, but it really kind of benefits larger lists with big units, like maybe like large skeleton units or large zombie units, because there's more dice being thrown. In a small list like this, I don't think you're going to miss it that much. But that 6-up, save that wound, whatever it might be, is not a bad thing to have.
Sure, and remember, the chariots automatically restore a chariot every round. right? If you lose a chariot every round, a chariot comes back. So as long as you don't bleed off more than one chariot, and obviously you're more or less immune to battle shock in this army anyways, right? Because just your small model size, and you have a, like, you're legitimately immune to battle shock in this army. I had to think about it for a second. You have a 10 bravery. It's not possible to lose enough models to trigger a battle shock to lose another model. Mathematically, it's impossible. So you're immune to battle shock already. You don't need to worry about that. Yeah. So like the only command ability you need to worry about is the let's charge farther one.
Very good.
There you go.
All right, let's get to the next one. So we've got a 2K list, my favorite of the three.
Oh, okay.
Well, anything 2K, because I think you're going to play the 2K more often than not. This is a mature list. This is a list that's probably most going to be played at organized events. I mean, I like the idea of 2.5K lists. I just don't think we're going to see them as much unless it's a personal preference. I think most of these events, from what I've been hearing, are going to be in that 2K range. So this is where you want to kind of aspire to get a list at least about this size. This will be probably the standard going forward. But I also love the fact that, the way you built it, there's I don't want to say anything about it. You talk about it. It's your list. So for 2K.
I don't mind, man. You were doing great. This is called Darken the Skies, right? I mean, that's what this is. This is the gunline TK list of nightmarish proportion. Like if shooting is powerful in Age of Sigmar, then let's only do that, right? So you've got High Queen Khalida, and the reason she's in the list is because her special ability is, I mean, other than being an awesome model, okay, and absolutely stunningly beautiful, she has the blessing of a Saf, which is until your next hero phase, you can add 1 to all hit rolls made by skeletons in your army during the shooting phase. No range, no nothing. Just period. That's what happens. All skeletons get +1 to hit when shooting. So she turns all your bows into 4-up hits instead of 5-up hits, which is cool. And she herself is relatively scary. Her venom staff only does, like, she swings around a weak cannonball every round. It's fine. She's not really a combat monster, but she's acceptable.
She's only got 5 wounds though.
Sure, she's fine.
That's a risk.
I mean, sure. She's also not super essential to the list, right? Like, she's a nice buff, but she's cheap. She's 120 points.
Yeah, I'm amazed. That's incredibly cheap. But then, given that she's only 5 wounds, it makes sense. But what she does, I think, definitely is more than 120 points worth.
Yeah, she's buffing everybody in the army, more or less. There is an exception. But so that's what it is. And so this is, let's all get shooty. Shooty time.
My favorite thing on High Queen Khalida. Now, look, I like vampires. I like everything else in the death list just as much as I like Tomb Kings. But I do like the special ability for her Ancient Hatred.
Oh, with Neferata,
specifically against vampires, but even more specifically, the fact that she does not like Neferata.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really recommend putting her into a battle against Neferata. That's going to end poorly really fast. Yeah.
Yeah, Neferata will munch her very quickly, but it's still interesting that she has some benefits against her.
Sure.
All right, what's next on the list here?
So then you just got archers. All the battle line in this army is filled out by skeletal archers. Massive units of skeletal archers, to be absolutely precise. So skeletal archers have that they make 1 extra attack with their ancient bows if the unit has 20 or more models and there's no enemies within 3 inches. So normally they shoot once. Now everybody shoots twice. There's 80 archers in the army. So now you've got 160 shots that all hit on 4 because of Khalida. So it's all hit on 4, wound on 4, no rend 1 damage, but okay. Seems good. That's still a lot of shots. Like that's a get a dice rolling program number of shots. And all the units return D6 slain archers every round. So every round you return an average of 3 or 4 archers that have died back to the unit. So they're fairly resilient despite having a garbage save. You can bring people back fairly easily. Yeah, it's the core battle line of the army, and it's just a ton of shots in the air. I mean, there's nothing else sneaky about it. It's literally just darkening the skies with
It's
arrows.
a gun. It's a gun line, or in this case, an arrow line. But
It's an arrow line, yes, exactly.
all right.
And that's a lot of arrows. Like, make no mistake, 180 arrows or 160 arrows. That's a lot of arrows.
So you start off with each of these units at 20, or did you have
at 30? No, they've got a little
30?
bit. Well, there's one at 20, just because, like, for points reasons.
Well, it gives you buff, just to some padding, so that you don't go below the 20 to get that extra +1 attack.
Correct. But remember, like most armies, if they're just suffering some weak shooting damage or something, right, you're going to regenerate that and get back over your 20 when you start replacing models.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. There's that.
All right. What else we have?
All right. So next up in the list, let me go back, because you have the archers on screen, and I'm trying to remember what's in my own list.
All right, I'll pull it up.
All right, no, it's fine. Next up, we've got
Bone Giant.
Yeah, the Bone Giant. Not a shooter anymore, but I wanted to have something, and his price was right for the melee threat to scare people away. I think the Bone Giant's really good for his cost. I think he can put out a tremendous amount of melee damage, and so that's like, he's there to sort of be a ward to keep people away from your line and to break other things that the shooting won't break. The Bone Giants, I just think he's a pretty solid model for what for his point cost. He's cheaper than the War Sphinx or the Necrosphinx, obviously, who are both better models, right? But he's got the nice, like, unstoppable assault thing, and his main weapon, which is his gigantic blades, it's 3 attacks, 4 up, 3 up, -2 rend, and 3 damage.
That's
right?
great.
Which is a good attack. And again, he's going to have the ability to have wounds restored to him and whatever by your caster, and he gets bonused from the Necrotect, who was here as well to help out with the other items that are going to come later.
All right. So next on the list is the Casket of Souls.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm remiss for explaining why this is good. It's the Casket of Souls. It's pretty good. It's always been pretty good. Do you like projecting power all over the battlefield and doing ridiculous damage? Well, then you like the Casket of Souls. I mean, there's not really... It doesn't need to be much more clever than that. First of all, it buffs the Lich Priest. So again, what you've got is a nice little package here. So it's going to help you do all the things like cast and restore your models, which is great. The Keeper guy on top can unbind, so it gives you a second source of unbinding. But obviously, the real purpose is the Unleashed Souls. You pick a visible enemy within 20 inches and roll a dice. On a 3 or more, so 66% chance, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. It suffers D6 if its bravery is 4 or less, which there are not a lot of bravery 4 or less models in the game, so whatever. Guess if you're picking on goblins. And then you roll a dice for each other enemy unit within 6 inches of the first unit. On a 5 or more, they also suffer D3 or D6 mortal wounds. It's free mortal wounds every turn, and it can just branch out and hit a lot of different units with those mortal wounds. Great for sniping off, sniping off or weakening characters. It's just a solid tool to have in the toolbox. Projecting mortal wounds around the battlefield, not a bad thing. Not a bad thing.
Not at all. I do want to point out something that was a surprise to me. In the General's Handbook, there are some wonky things. There are some things I don't agree with. I think there's some things that they made mistakes on, like limiting some units that were more than 1 to just 1. But there's some strange things that they've put in there, and one is on this one. This is listed as battlefield role behemoth, and I think it's leader as well.
Oh, you're asking what's the actual role of this thing?
Yeah, but it has a behemoth. It's a behemoth. So the Casket of Souls is listed as a leader and a behemoth.
Correct.
And I respect that it's a leader. It makes sense because there's a guy on top of there. He has a number of different abilities. It makes complete sense that it'd be a leader role. I actually was surprised it wasn't listed in the artillery, but you have to make a choice. What makes more sense? But the fact that it's listed as a behemoth surprised me because it's not an especially big model.
It's not, but I'm glad it was. I mean, the reality is it's better for a list like this, right? If it was artillery, it would be conflicting with your Screaming Skull catapults.
True. At this level, though, you
not.
wouldn't have that limitation, though.
Well, I only went with 2 Screaming Skulls. There's no reason you couldn't do all 3 here.
True.
Right? So, my point is I actually like it better in that behemoth role because if I'm going to do the crazy gun line, that lets me max out my skull catapults and still get a ton of or still get the arc in there. Sorry. Whatever.
Yeah, but it's not listed as a monster, and there's a very big distinction that people should recognize. But because you're a behemoth does not mean you're a monster, because a monster is a very specific keyword, and there's a lot of abilities that are against monsters. I don't even seen anything that's against behemoths. It's just a battlefield role. All right, let's go.
One is for Force Org, one is for the actual battle itself.
Exactly.
There's a difference, yeah.
All right, so your Lich Priest is next. Let me see if I can find that.
I mean, he's just a Lich Priest. He's a dum-dum. Like all things, he's just there to cast spells. Like he's there to stitch people back together, right? Like he's got righteous smiting, which is cool. He can, you can make it so you can make it so that you get more shots.
Yeah, on rolls of 6, you'll get an extra shot. It's not going to happen a lot, but with all the shots that all the rolls, 120 potential.
160.
160. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean the key is yes. Now he can only hit 1 unit of that, so he's going to hit 30 guys, right? And the rule of 1 says I can't sit there and spam this spell. But the idea being, pick one of your units at 30, and they're going to generate 5 extra shots, so now we can get up to 165 or something. That's cool.
Yeah, and the rule of 1 also means that once you get those extra shots from rolling those 6s, you're not getting further extra shots also from additional 6s. Yeah. Yep.
But still good. But mostly he's just there to stitch people back together to make them feel better because he's there to do that. Lots of different things gain that grant the spells of can restore these wounds and can do this stuff. So there you go.
And I just want to make a comment, just reply to somebody who made a post on the video. There is no chat, guys. I'm sorry. I still haven't figured out how to make that work. I've tried it a couple of times and it is completely blown up. And the actual the session. They are releasing something new. Google or YouTube is at some point in September. Hopefully that will change that. My apologies. Just it seems like there's somebody every video lately that's saying no chat, guys, no chat. Sorry. All right, moving on. We will try to get chat as soon as we can. All right, we talked about Screaming Skull catapults. Let's go and look at them a little bit more deeply. We got 2 of them in your list.
I do.
And I love them. I'm converting up my own so that it can make them more undead neutral. And I'm using, again, Tomb King parts. I know, sacrilege. But let's talk about the Screaming Skull catapult. First, before we even talk about it specifically, let's talk about what this means when you have 2 profiles on a war machine.
Sure. So you've got the crew, which are separate sort of models and whatever. They could be shot independently, they could be targeted independently, and so on. And you've got the war machine itself, which is a thing. And it's usually not too relevant. It matters here because again, Death Wizards can raise just the skeleton crew. So it's normally the weakness of war machines like this is that you can get the crew shot right off of them. But here you shoot the crew off, you can just summon a new crew, exactly. Which is pretty fantastic. It's a huge advantage and another reason for the Lich Priest. I'm not a massive fan of this war machine, honestly, normally. That is to say, I don't, in the world of war machines, it's not great. But with the Necrotect, it actually becomes pretty solid. It's resilient because of its ability to resummon crew, and the Necrotect is what turns it up all the way. Because he, if you go down to Deathless Overseer under the crew, that's where it really comes into play. There you go. So you can see, basically, you can shoot a Screaming Skull catapult twice in your shooting phase instead of once if there is a Necrotect within 1 inch of the war machine. And so obviously your setup on the board here is going to be Screaming Skull Catapult, Necrotect, Screaming Skull Catapult, so he's buffing both of them, right? And what that means is that now you're putting out 2 shots at 4 up, 3 up, neg, I think it's neg 1, I don't remember the random off the top of my head, neg 1, neg 2? Neg 1. And then 4 automatic damage. I like 4 automatic damage better than D6, honestly. I think that's pretty great. Yeah, you can't get the, like, give me the high average. I'll take it. I think that's fantastic. And go ahead.
Oh, you got 2 of them too, so you're shooting twice on 2 of these guys. Even with a die 6, I mean, I'm sure you'll average around 3, but having a standard 4, that's a lot of damage. I mean, I wish the rend was a little higher, but I'm happy. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, the rend is the big weakness, but again, being able to double up on the shots means you're putting 4 of these shots into the air. And here's the real thing: this army, the goal here is to make the enemy army flee before they ever get into combat. So like you want to pick on the units that aren't immune to battle shock. That should be your general strategy here. And you just bomb that unit down, and you're lowering its bravery more, because when the skull catapults hit, they also lower the bravery by 2, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you just get them to start fleeing before they ever reach you. Like that's part of your game plan, right? So if you've got a big unit, you want to put a bunch of shots from your archers into it. You want to put some catapults into it. You lower their bravery down, and then you just let battle shock do the rest of the work. Yeah, right? That battle shock is your big friend here.
That bravery thing doesn't stack though, because it says
no.
That's a question that could come up, but the wording makes it clear that it's if you've gotten attacked by any of these guys, then you get this. It's not each time.
No, it is not. But down by 2 is a big deal.
Oh yeah, very much.
Like 2 bravery, that matters a lot if you're talking especially about more elite type stuff. Things that have like a 7 or 8 bravery and they're high wound model counts. If they go from a 7 bravery to a 5 and you only killed 1 or 2 of them, the chances that suddenly they bleed the other 2 goes from very unlikely to a strong possibility, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking of things like shooting demigriffs or something like that, right? Making things like that bleed is pretty good.
It also comes into play with any other abilities that affect bravery. Like, again, these are mostly from the other side of the Death faction, but Banshees, any screams from a Terrorgeist, and even the Mourngul itself that we talked about from Forge World. It has a neutering effect on the hit rolls, shooting and combat, based on your proximity to it if you're within 6 inches, but it depends on whether or not you're 6 and under or 7 and over. So if you have like a 7 or 8 bravery and you got hit by a Screaming Skull Catapult, it's now more effective, that Mourngul, and unit is even
more. 2 to hit is no joke in any way in the world. That is a massive penalty to hit. So yeah, absolutely agreed. Okay, so there you go. Let's see what else is in this list. I'm trying to. Oh, the Necrotect himself, who's just literally there as a buff engine. That guy just hides as best he can and hopes to not get shot. That's his only role.
He doesn't do anything else. He's got no other benefit.
Nope. He has 100 points that is making the Screaming Skulls fire twice more and passing out some other buffs here and there.
Yeah, he makes him move a little bit extra. That's about it. Oh, and re-rolling wound rolls of 1s. That's not bad.
No, he's a good little buff machine. Good job, little buff machine. That's all you do.
Okay, let's see. So next on the list is the skeleton horse archers. Yes, I love these guys.
Yeah, so the horse archers are fantastic. Like, these are an underutilized unit. These things are so ridiculously good, and I don't see people use them. Again, they're skeletons, so they will benefit from the bonus to hit. So they'll go to each of these guys gets 2 attacks, 2 shots. Like, each archer has 2 shots. So a unit of 5 puts out 10 shots. Now they're hitting on 4 up, 4 up. They get all the benefits of everything I've said that's related to archer crap, because they're the same, unit or whatever, right? But these guys, where the power lies, and this is it's so crazy to me that this is even a thing that anybody can do, because it's so good. First of all, they move very far. They're a very mobile unit. Neat. They can shoot and run. So which is what they're all just going to do. So their average move is actually like 15 and a half inches, right? Just figure that, because they're going to run all the time. You're never charging with these guys. They move around the board 15 and a half inches. Okay. Every round, they return D3 slain horse archers. D3 on these 2 wound models, right? So as long as you always pull your icon bearer last, right?
Right.
And so even if it gets scaled down to that guy, you can be back up to 4 next round. Basically almost back up to full potential, right? And where the power of these guys comes in is like the Angry Desert Wind. This unit can shoot instead of moving in the movement phase. If it does so, it can move in the shooting phase. If it moves in the shooting phase, it can retreat.
Yep.
That's so good. Like, they can be in a bad position or somewhere in range, shoot, and then just run out of range in the shooting phase. Just run 16 inches away to the other side of the battlefield after taking their shots. These are some of the most evasive models in the game because of that ability.
Yeah, what's nice also is, and again, I know this is a pure Tomb King's list, is that the White King ability or any ability that affects Death Rattle or Skeleton units will affect these guys. The White King command ability, if you were inclined to take a White King in some list, I mean, no reason why you can't in some lists. You wouldn't in this list, of course, but if you did, you can give these guys extra attacks. All those abilities are synergistic. So even if you go off Tomb Kings, these will give your opponents fits. I'd say they were completely broken if they had any rend. The fact they have no rend makes it a little bit more balanced and reasonable, but still, they're not overtly powerful. They're overtly utilitous. Yep.
Right. Like this is one of those units that pays huge dividends with clever play.
Yeah.
That's what I will say.
Yeah, and I like units that break the rules a little, because they will, if you, like you said, clever play, but they make you think outside the box and have to adjust your tactics, because it's not going to be like, oh, I just know these guys are going to move in the movement phase, shoot in the shooting phase, and they can either do this or that, and like standard. When you break that standard, it can really change up the game and force you to adjust.
Yeah, let me give you an easy example. These guys are also your objective claimers in this army, right? Because they can get around to almost any objective instantaneously. But let me give an easy example of how this would work. Okay, so there's an objective. I need to get to it. It's, some distance away, right? Well, I could move up into range where I could shoot at them. Normally, if I had a normal unit, I'd have to move up into range where I could shoot at them, right? Or I can instead, during the movement phase, shoot at the people on the objective, see how many I kill, and then decide whether or not I want to risk moving these guys up to try to claim that objective. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it changes the way that you get to make decisions, and that's why I think they're so good. I would take a lot more of these guys. They're actually fairly expensive for what they are, but I think they're worth every penny.
So for each 5, we're talking about
140 points.
140 points. That's a very respectable number. I actually think that's a worthy amount. That makes them. It'll make you make a choice on whether or not you want to include that, because that's reasonably expensive for just 5 of them. Because I really don't think that I would take them in a unit of 5. I would probably take them in a unit of 10, and then now that's a good 280 then. So that's a major choice to make. Why only 5?
I don't have the 140 points, and I don't think they're worth a war Sphinx in a group of 10.
Well, that's a good
I think
point.
they're mainly utility. Like, there comes a point where something better be earning its points.
Well, for objective claiming, you might want to have, but the fact that they can restore models, yes. Yeah,
you just got to wait, right? They'll get back to 5. If you give them time, they'll get back to 5.
Right, but a War Sphinx is not going to claim an objective, not in most of these scenarios. So that's the benefit that these guys do have. This is a game winner based on the scenario. That's what they bring to the table. Absolutely. Okay, Ashapti, I know this is your favorite, or at least from the oozing that I hear regarding Ashapti, it seems like your favorite unit within the Tomb Kings list. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, they're ridiculously good. Yeah, they're amazing. Yes, they are the best unit. I have the second most Ashapti of anyone I know in the world. I know one person who has more than me, and he's on my list. and I've openly told him that if he wants, he had mentioned getting rid of some of his bow shop. I said I'll be happy to give him a home.
Wait, is that because of your pressure, or just because he happened to want to get rid
I
of
think he happened to want to. So I included 3 bow shop in here, more for thematic reasons. I think they're big, tough dudes. I think they're fun. You know, they go to 3-up saves against damage of 1. They're going to be the shooters. Hopefully they're not getting attacked in melee, and they're taking 1 damage shots a lot, which makes them very resilient. Their shooting is a less optimal way to fight with these guys. Honestly, like the ritual blade staves are better because it's just the number of attacks you get to project are so much bigger. They only get 1 shot with their great bow, and that's ultimately the weakness. That being said, if the bow does hit, like a good round of rolling, you'll wreck a unit. 4 up to hit, 3 up to wound, neg 1 rend, and D3 damage is no joke. The problem is it's just not a lot of shooting, right? That's at 3 shots, you're not tipping it that much. What you're going to do with these is shoot at monsters, right? Like that's what these guys are here for.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Or individual characters wandering around, stuff like that.
Right, and good range at 24, and they have staying power.
Yes, exactly. A little bit tougher, good staying power, and the ability to project out that damage.
All right, and then we already talked about the Necrotect, so we can move on to the next list. I really like this.
No, just so everybody understands, there are no, what do I want to call it, command traits or artifacts in this army because it's led by Khalida, and you don't get to pick those when you have a special character.
Right, unique characters, you can't pick them, but you do get the main 6+ save on top of all your other saves, the main faction allegiance. So you will still be able to get that because that's not linked to the character.
Right, correct. And here you've got plenty of leaders to take advantage of it, right? Plenty of heroes. So your Lich Priest can project that out. Khalida projects it out. The Necrotech projects it out. And
the Screaming Skull, the Casket.
I don't know if the Casket actually has the hero keyword.
Oh yes, it's a leader. It's a leader. It's not a hero. You're right.
Yeah. So, but either way, it doesn't matter. The point is, you're gonna seat those around your archers so that way your archers are even more, even more resilient. Nope, the Casket does have the hero keyword, so it will do it too. There you go.
It does.
Okay. It does. Yep, it does.
There you go. Okay. So you have 4 sources here to project that out. Great.
Yep. And at that point, you're projecting like a huge bubble over the battlefield. More or less, your army has the 6-up ward.
All right. All right, let's take a look at the big list. Now, again, this is I want to just before we actually dive too deeply into this, the 2.5K list, the 2,500 point list. It used to be 8th edition and earlier 2.5K was the standard tournament list. Age of Sigmar is a different animal. It's a different game. I mean, there's different mechanics and there's so many synergies and status effects. You really need tokens to play Age of Sigmar much more cleanly and efficiently. And as you get to, as I've my experience, and I played a lot of games. I've yet to meet anybody outside of maybe GW that has played more than I do. I play a little too many of these games. And 2.5K is a big friggin' game. There is a lot of stuff. Once you get over 2K, I think the game kind of bogs down a little bit and can be difficult to keep track of, even with tokens, because there's so many things that can happen. So you're not going to probably play this type of a game too often, but you should. You should give it a try. You should see. And because this is where you get to bring a lot more of your toys. And I love this list because we did not see something like this in your previous list. So go ahead, give us a rundown on what you took and why.
Yeah, so a couple notes. The quick guide at the top, aside from being misspelled on this little thing, is wrong. If anybody's looking at it, it says that you only get 4 behemoths at 2,500 points. That's not right. If you look at the General's Handbook on your force org, 2,500 points is a war host, and you can take 5 behemoths. So just so nobody thinks I'm cheating. Yeah, so this one's fun. Yeah, this is the kitty cat list because everybody knows I love kitty cats. I had a 5 Sphinx list in 8th edition.
I know. I faced it.
We never saw it before. Yeah, indeed.
I faced it. You and I played that list. Didn't you put that that big war?
No, I ended up playing Long Island War Game. I played Nick with the 5 Sphinx list and crushed it, Skaven into the ground.
Yes, that was an ugly game. Yes.
He brought an all infantry Skaven list against my all kitty cat list, and that didn't end well for him. Yeah. Anyway, this is the return of the 5 kitty cat list. So let's talk about how this is played out. So first off, we've got the Royal War Sphinx. Love it. It's the Tomb King on the Royal War Sphinx. I'm going to talk about the command abilities and stuff like that right now. So this guy, because it's relevant and we're on this guy, this dude's he's beast. He's got his fiery roar, shooty attack, his breath weapon. He's got all these different, very dangerous melee attacks coming out of the monster and him. At base, the Tomb King's Glaive of Kings is 3 attacks at 3 up, neg 2 rend, 3 damage. Very respectable. And then obviously he's got unlike this guy's a 4-up save, 12 wound general, who also has the Sacred War Statue rule. So he halves wounds, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Very important. Yep. Not to mention the fact that he's got his Thunder Crush, so when he charges, he can roll a die, and if it's less than the number of models in the unit, they suffer D3 more wounds. He can be stone shaped by a Lich Priest, so he can be healed. Yeah, he's pretty great, and he buffs all Mummy and Death Rattle units, which will come in later.
He's got it all.
Yes, which he can buff. So he's buffing himself, right? He's actually giving himself +1 to wound because he is a Mummy.
And how many points is he? 340. Not bad.
No, he's totally worth it. Now, he's going to be even more worth it in a second, because the command trait we're going to give him is Red Fury, okay? And forget you stupid vampires. We've stolen your good abilities and put it on somebody who's actually worth a darn. So, roll a dice after your general attacks in the combat phase. If the roll is less than the number of wounds they inflicted, they can immediately attack again. Well, guess what? This thing's probably going to do more than 6 wounds, right? in the combat phase, hopefully. Between all of his crazy attacks and giving himself +1 wound, he's got 3 attacks that are 3 up now, 2 up, neg 2 rend, 3 damage. If 2 of those land in some way, he just hit the number, right? Mm-hmm. Not to mention the Venom Spike Tail, the Stone Claws and Teeth, which put out 6 attacks at 3 up, neg 1 rend, 1 damage. So this guy puts out a fair number of attacks. And the point is, I'm just saying it's where Red Fury becomes automatic, right? Like the roll can't even fail. Mm-hmm. If he has like a 5 or 6 round, it's still in your favor to do that again. Okay. Well,
let's tell everybody who's viewing what Red Fury does.
That's what I said. Roll a dice after your general attacks in the combat phase. If the roll is less than the number of wounds they inflicted, they immediately attack again. So in other words, this guy's easily going to put out the 6 damage and then
go again. Yes.
And rule of 1 says he can only do that once. Cry and shame, because otherwise he would do it infinitely. But that's fine. And then for his artifact, this guy's going to swing around the Tomb Blade. Okay, so you pick 1 melee weapon the bearer can use. It can't be a weapon of the mount, which is fine. It's going to be his Glaive of Kings. Okay, and if any of the attacks made by the weapon slays an enemy model, you can heal 1 wound suffered by the bearer of the Tomb Blade or by a death model within 6 inches of the bearer for each enemy model that was slain. Mm-hmm. This guy goes back to full wounds at the end of every combat phase.
Yeah, and he's essentially like 18 wounds because he has round up, but that 12 doesn't make it a 24. It makes it more like an 18. But when you consider all this other stuff, he's just going to continue to regenerate. It's going to take forever to remove him from the battlefield.
This is as close to an immortal general as you will ever get.
I can't believe he's only 340.
Because he will have wounds. He's got a good armor save. He halves wounds. He can be healed by the Lich Priest quite efficiently, and he heals himself massively every round because his 1 up heal is worth 2 down, right? That's basically the math here. Yeah. If he takes 2 damage, he actually only takes 1, right? Yep. But his 1 that healed eliminated 2 future damage. This guy's hard to move. Like, that is the bottom line. With those abilities, he becomes straight bonkers. And by the way, that +1 to wound, I mean, that he gives himself, it's good for all of his kitty cat attacks too. So
Yep. It's amazing to me because a Vampire Lord and a Zombie Dragon, which doesn't have this much resiliency, it has really incredible resiliency, but it's 440 points, but it doesn't have the halving. And if you look at, for instance, the nearest I can see is probably from the Beastclaw Raiders. The point cost for the Frost Lords or the Huskars on a Stonehorn, which has that similar ability, is really, it's the cheapest of those is a 380, the Huskar. And I don't think he's comparable to this guy when you look at all the other stats and stuff. But the Frost Lord on the Stonehorn, which would be, I think, the closer of them, is also more than 100. It's 140 points more expensive than the Royal War Sphinx. This is a really incredibly well costed for its power, and it's just brutal.
Yep, this guy has good not the best in the game. And don't get me wrong, I'm not claiming this guy's Gordorak or something, but he'll get the job done. He does the damage because he's attacking twice almost every round. He's wounding almost universally on 2-up every round. Every attack he makes has rend, period, right? And he is going to heal the living bejesus out of himself. So he's incredibly defensive and very offensive. That's what I want in general.
I would sneak this guy into a 2,000 point list too, and but yeah, at 2,500. Okay, let's see what else we've got.
Sure.
Because yeah, he's just amazing. All right, so we got Skeleton Warriors. I'm gonna go pull that up. We haven't talked about those yet.
I mean, you don't need to. They're garbage. They're here. This is called Min Battle Line, folks. Welcome back to Min Core. This is me throwing. That's 4 units of 10 because I need to have 4 Battle Line units.
That's right.
So I'm just literally throwing the cheapest possible option added here, which is 4 units of Skeleton Warriors. Their job is to walk around and die.
Yeah, a unit of 40 Skeleton Warriors is a sight to behold. That is a blender unit. But for a 10-man unit of Skeleton Warriors, not much to be impressed with. Yeah.
And who cares? They're there to get in the way and beat chaff.
Right. And they're cheap.
They're cheap. They just run around, literally run. Like I would run them every turn to keep up with everything, and they never have to attack. They can be charged. I don't care. They just go run around and go booga booga booga. I'm a skeleton.
Right. They can hold up flanks just to make your opponents have to speed bumps.
Yep.
Okay.
They are.
Very cool. All right. So we talked about the Royal War Sphinx. Now let's go to the Necro Sphinx.
Oh baby.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yes.
I think I just passed it. There we go.
Oh, this guy. Yeah. Okay. So there's 2 of these in the list, which is just grotesque. These things are just straight up bonkers.
What's the points on them again? Let's see.
400. 400 points.
Yeah. All right. So it's a healthy cost, each one of them.
Mm-hmm. They'll make it back.
It's a more goal.
Yeah. So again, 12 wounds. They fly pretty good. They fly 12 inches undamaged. They have wounds like everything that's like most of this list. They have wounds. Again, they can be healed by by casters or whatever. And they have this need to destroy, where if there's an enemy within 12 inches, they have to attempt to charge. However, if they do, they roll 3 dice rather than 2 and use the 2 highest scores. So they've got old school Swift Stride, which is fantastic. And so who cares? Whatever. Great. Good. Oh no, I have to go murder things. That's what I wanted to do anyways, I assure you. And it's because you don't have to charge the nearest thing. So you're going to get these big rolls. You just charge whatever the thing is that you want. And let the giant scything blades, let's start there with the 4 attacks that are 3 up, 2 up. 3 up, 2 up. And neg 3 rend 3 damage. God forbid you roll 2 6s when fighting a monster with those, because then you immediately also do 10 mortal wounds. The turn that triggers is going to be one of the greatest moments of your gaming life.
Oh my god.
And then, with the stone claws, it's just whatever, fine. 4 more attacks that are also rend at some damage. And then, why not throw in the barbed or the venom spike tail for some more rend and more damage? I mean, this dude's a beast. He's a straight beast. He will murder things that get in your way. That neg 3 rend is worth its weight in
oh my god.
gold.
Yeah. Nobody should have any doubt that this is the best iteration of Tomb Kings that we've seen, just like with the Bretonnians, that it took Age of Sigmar to bring these guys out. And I really think with the cost structure, this is an Apex army list. It's up in the top tier, at least until we see more sub-factions get their own specialized allegiance abilities with their battle tomes. As it stands now, I wouldn't care. This is everything I see in the Tomb Kings and the synergies. Things like this are just they just blow this army type to the top of the scale.
Yeah, again, there are things in the world that kill Necrosphinxes, but they are few and far between.
There's a lot of monster hunting things. Yeah. I mean, Bone Splitters are all monster hunters.
I will plow this thing into unit of bone splitters any day of the week. That is going to end with a lot of dead orcs.
I would love to see that battle report, man.
I am not afraid of some dumb orcs with sticks.
They do a lot against monsters, though.
They better bring all of it.
But there's a lot of things that do things against monsters, so there are ways to try to whittle these guys down. But this guy's got it all.
He is a beast.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Next up on the list is Necropolis Knights. Okay, we haven't seen those. Let's see if I'm going the right way here.
Necropolis Knights are one of the most undercosted, effective BA units in the game. These things, you get 3 of them for 160 points. So I said, let's take 6 of them. Most notably, these guys are Death Rattle, so they benefit from your... Remember, they're going to benefit from your Royal King's bonus, okay? Right. So read all those to wounds as 2-up. These guys are great for a unit of 3. You're putting out 16 attacks, with the champion, all at very respectable numbers, all with rend, right? A lot of 3s, going to be a lot of 2s, all rending. The poison fangs of the Necroserpent, so the thing that's making 3 attacks every round. If you roll a 6, they suffer a mortal wound in addition to the normal damage, so they can just trigger off additional mortal wounds. Their save isn't that great. It's 5-up, but they have the free shield, so they go to 4-up in the combat phase. Most notably, every round, one of these just comes back. One of these massive 5-wound monstrosities just returns automatically as long as your standard bearer is alive, and he's always going to be the last guy you remove. So if the unit exists, the standard bearer exists, and he's going to get a new, fresh 5-wound buddy who shows up right next to him. Like all this stuff, they can always charge a min of 6 inches, which I love. Never fail a close charge again. How many times in battle reports do you see, oh, then I failed the charge, and I was so mad because it was such an easy charge. Yep. Never do that again with these guys. And the Death Wizard himself can also reanimate them. So sure, more restoration. Like, it's not hard for this unit to go from 1 to 3 in the span of a round quite quickly and easily.
There's nothing more debilitating than having that 3-inch charge that you only can fail on Snake Eyes
and failing
and then failing.
Which Tomb Kings don't know what that's like. You don't fail 5-inch charges. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, these guys are just so bustedly good for 160 points. They're mobile. They're mobile enough. 8 inches is nothing to scoff at. They're damaging. They're not tough in the save faction. They're tough in the resiliency faction. You've got to put them down in 1 round, which is hard. That's 15 wounds, right? Or they're going to come back and be at full strength in no time.
So they're going to command the attention of a real beater unit to do that, and it's not going to be easy.
The trick in this army is target saturation.
Yeah.
Like, everything requires insane focus to kill. If you let anything in this army go for a round, if you don't burn it to the ground, it will be back.
Well, this guy's weakness is shooting, though. I mean, you shoot at this thing, it's not going to get the extra plus on its shield. And that 5-up, if you have any kind of rend, which not often happens with shooting, but it can, you'll get wounds in there. So, but you cannot do it with just 1 unit unless it is a ridiculously high volume output shooting unit, which is not a whole lot of unless you have a ton of them. So it's going to be artillery. It's going to be something that's not going to be focusing on the kitty cats.
That is correct. If they want to spend their time shooting their cannons and stuff at my Necropolis Knights and letting my Necrosphinxes and War Sphinxes run wild, great. Great. Knock yourself out.
Oh, God. Oh, I'd love to play against this list. It might give me fits, but it would be hysterical. All right, Cimmerian War Sphinx. Where is that?
the other half of the kitty cat equation. These guys are more tough than they are offensive. They're still good. I mean, they've got the Thunder Crush in the same way. They have wounds again. They can be healed. They put out a lot of attacks. Again, they've got the Fiery Roar, so they can project some good range damage. Again, they've got the Death Rattle keyword, so they can they're gonna benefit from the Tomb King's command ability. So again, all those 3-ups become 2-ups. The Fiery Roar becomes 1-up, so it still just fails on 1. Because the rule of 1s. But again, on the whole, for the most part, the real weakness to this is that the spears don't have rend. The Tomb Guards, spears don't have rend. So even though it puts out 8 attacks at a pretty good hit and wound, it can be easy for heavily armored targets. This thing doesn't crack nuts as easy. This is really good against like big units of infantry, especially like 5-up infantry or something like that. That's where the War Sphinx excels. That's the matchup you want to pick there. Your Necro Sphinx is your nutcracker.
So the reason why you took this instead of the other kitty cats is that it's cheaper. You can get 2 more of them onto the battlefield.
Yeah. These guys are only $280 a piece, which is quite reasonable, I think.
Very reasonable, yeah.
They're still, don't get me wrong, they're still quite offensive. They can do some decent damage. Anything that's got 6 attacks at 3-up at -1 rend isn't too bad. All told, this thing could put out somewhere between 15 and 17 attacks in a round. With some measure of rend or multi-wound or something. So again, all wounding on probably 2s if they're anywhere near the general. So I don't think that that's anything you want to shake a stick at. Mobile enough at 6 inches. They're one of the slower things in the army, but that's fine. These are more they're more like anvils that you stick into big infantry units to either hold them up or slowly grind them down. These guys win in the grind.
Yeah. All right, and then of course a Lich Priest.
Yeah, just he's there to do all the stone shaping I've been talking about.
Got it. So a nice big scary list with all the toys. Very interesting. And I'm just going to go ahead and stop our so we can do the screen share. Any final points on Tomb Kings in general in match play? Again, we're talking specifically in match play, although you can definitely apply this stuff to your open play games. I know a lot of people, for instance, they take the points. We've been talking about this from Andy and Remy's show to people that I know locally. They take the points to try and make it a reasonably balanced game, but they like the open play environment, the free form environment without some of the restrictions for match play. But for match play specifically, any other final thoughts in terms of Tomb Kings, how they play, and any of your experiences having played them?
Yeah, sure. I love playing them. They're really fun. They are the best they've ever been. You're not wrong at all. Everything in the army has a purpose. Everything can have a use. There's not a lot of whiffs in this army. Even dumb things like carrying, which aren't very damaging, can be so good for things like objective claiming and stuff like that, because their ability to fly high and be untouchable and then suddenly come down to the battlefield. There's so many little tricks and clever rewards you can get in this army. It really rewards smart play. You're spoiled for choices. It is a great time to be a Tomb King player. The allegiance and artifacts work really well with them. Like I showed, I really think like the Red Fury Tomb Blade combination on that Royal War Sphinx is just unbelievably good for a general. It just makes you just a monster of a general. Because obviously killing the general is something a lot of people try to do. They try to snipe out your general and stop your command abilities. Good luck with that. I encourage you to waste all your effort trying to put that guy in the ground. I think they're just really solid overall. I don't know if there's anything in them that I think is as like super crazy. That is to say, the Tomb Kings don't have like a Nagash or an Archaon or a Gorgorak.
They don't need it.
They don't, and that's just like Cetra's really good, by the way. Like I didn't do a Cetra list, but I could have done like a big Cetra list at 2.5K, where Cetra's running around making giant blocks of skeletons hit on 2s and wound on, like 2s or 3s, and just taking like 4 attacks each. I mean, it's crazy what you can do with even basic skeletons. Tyler Mingle at Adepticon last year ran an amazing Cetra-focused skeleton list, and because of the range on their spears, having like the longer pokey range,
yep.
he had a 30 skeleton unit that got in and made like 90 attacks, hitting on 2s and wounding on 3s, and just was vaping elite units. Then when this massive horde of skeletons just hit them and just just like start up the chainsaw. So this army is incredibly synergistic at the same time. So dig in. There's a lot of good options, and play something you really enjoy. Obviously, I tend toward the smaller model count lists, toward using all my big fun toys and monsters, but you can use whatever you want. I mean, it's all good. I don't think that there is like one list with TK that is to rule them all. There's 10 different good viable alternatives and synergy strategies.
I think that's the strength of Age of Sigmar in general. I don't think that we've seen in any of the factions, a one list is the go-to list. Where the way they've built this game and the way things are going with matched play, specifically, we're learning a lot about where the meta is going, and it's evolving as new battle tomes come out. But there's so many ways to build a list within within a faction. Even if you stay just Tomb Kings, there's a whole spectrum just there in of itself. And look what it opens up if you try to dip into the other side of the death list. I mean, that's the case with everything that I'm seeing right now so far. There's no one way to play any of these lists.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So great. So what do you have coming up? Anything you want to announce? Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. I guess what I'll talk about is, obviously we just finished up our last hobby challenge in the PMP in our hobby community. If anybody's curious about the PMP, they can hit my channel. I've got lots of videos talking about our hobby challenges. We're going to be starting a new one. It's going to be here in the not too distant future, I will say. It's going to be a big one. So if you're interested in a big personal hobby challenge to get yourself motivated in painting, watch my channel for an announcement in the soon-ish time frame.
I will put that link down below, but just for the people who may not know, because not everybody is a member of our YouTuber community, what is the PMP?
So it is our hobby-focused Google Plus community. It is a community focused on taking the next step in your own personal hobby journey. No matter where you are in your painting or hobbying or modeling skills, whether you're just starting out or have been doing it for years and are competing in competitions, we would love to have you in our community. The only thing that is required is a desire to take the next step. That's it.
There's some really amazing painters and modelers in this group, and they just show off their wares. They very, very friendly and open to share techniques and styles and, answer your questions. It's like you said, it's that the eternal fight against the gray.
Yeah, our goal with the community is not just post and forget. It's feedback, constructive criticism, things to help you out. Lots of members there are very engaged and active and offering constant feedback to people who post things. And every month we do a show where we review every model that was submitted for sort of final submission and sort of talk about what we like, what we don't like, what we think the painter can do as their next steps, etc. So.
Yeah, I'm fast approaching completing my my Sylvaneth list, not for any hobby challenge, but just to finish an army. And Valerial, I'm not even touching that model until that entire paint job is done. So I've learned already from my first submission with the Dryads with feedback, and looking forward to putting that up on the PMP and see what kind of feedback you guys have. And the criticism is all good, constructive criticism. It's all positive.
Always positive, always constructive. It's not. And it's about the advice offered is always going to be relative to where you are, the next step for you. It's not going to be like, oh, here's what you need to do to be a display painter or something like that, right? It's help you take the next step. That's
it's not about who's better and who or anything like that. It's not a competition. It's what do we do to try to to improve all of our skills. Everybody's got something to contribute, as good as anyone is, and there are some really, really good painters in this community. Thank you again, Vince. Just for my own, I've got another unlocking. I'm actually doing double duty today. So about later on this evening, I think about 7:30 Eastern time, I've got Marek Wolf coming on. We're going to talk about Seraphon, the Lizardman, as well as a number of battle reports I'm going to be releasing over the next week. I've got some other unlockings that I'm working on. And if you guys have any questions, if you have any requests, I'll do my best. And as always, I think I'm going to try to probably start a show with just Q&A, because people send me so many questions. So feel free to go reach out and send me questions. If you have a list, I might do a show just with people's lists and just give some suggestions on lists. You can also send me, if you want, your collection, if you have a starting collection, and see how maybe I might build a list with that collection. I might do a couple of those as just part of either paint-episodes or just individual episodes. Vince, as always, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Looking forward to all the content that you put out. You always put out such great content. Have a great day, everybody.